Fantastic. Yes, I see people dropping in. Welcome, welcome. Happy Thursday. Shawna, Ryan, how's this Thursday treating you?
I think we're in the grind of exactly this subject matter, right, Shawna?
Yeah, we were just saying, we're starting with interviews, doing this panel, going back into interviews.
I literally just came off of 3, and I think Shawna has as many, if not more, right after this. So you're catching us live in the middle of the entire subject matter.
So hiring headaches, this is gonna totally just be like real-time stream of consciousness. What I was just talking about, what I'm about to be talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Well, let's see. I'm going to kick us off by, officially. So Emmett, I'm not seeing our title screen, but I'm guessing you can switch it off and we'll go to our group format. First of all, what I want to say is I'm excited to say, I think we're back in meeting mode on Zoom, which means it's not just Tim's face and my face doing a broadcast. This is actually like a 4-way or 10-way or 20-way conversation. So I'm excited to be back in meeting mode. Thank you, Jed, for all the feedback that you gave us and inspiring us to get that done. So that means if you want to jump into the conversation, you can raise your hand or chat us or whatever. We'll try and drag you in. With that said, I want to say welcome to this week's weekly briefing. This is where Tim and I lead a conversation every week to talk about hot button issues, trends, things that industry owners need to be aware of or that are talking about. And Tim, I'm excited to jump into this conversation because this one has been bumping up on my radar over and over and over again of hiring headaches. Tim, is it also bumping up on your radar a lot these days?
Oh yeah, isn't it interesting, like the cycles that we have to go through in this industry when you kind of play it out over year, and the demands or the requirements to keep up with clients, keep up with your business, keep up with finances, keep up with trends. And now it's this latest one is, hey, there's a talent. The talent exists. We know it, right? There's just something off that's making this connection of work and individuals with the talent making things happen. So actually, what I'm excited about this topic too is that the two of you are the one that brought it forward to us. Specifically, you guys were having the conversation in community. We recognize the opportunity and we're putting you up on stage with us to process it. So I'm thankful to both of you to being community members and starting this conversation with us.
Yeah, can you, Ryan, can you just do a quick introduction for anybody that doesn't know you and then pass it off to Shawna?
Sure. Yeah, I'm recently hired at Spillt as senior creative director. But I think very interestingly, 2 things about the perspective. I just tried to get a job. And also for the previous 3 years, I have been training and coaching all the people that you want to hire for your job at School of Motion. So much so that we actually created a demo reel class. And I've been holding open office hours for the last 5 years where I'm literally coaching people for free, going through their demo reels and giving them critiques, which reflexively now is coming back on me because I'm seeing the reels of the people that I've been spending 5 years trying to teach. So it's kind of like this weird feedback loop. But yeah, it's a very interesting time to be talking about this for me because I'm kind of still in the middle of both sides of it. So Shawna, to you.
Yeah, and I'm Shawna Schultz. I run MassFX Media, and we're based out of Denver. We do animation and visual effects for documentaries and brands. And so we kind of split our time between that. We've been in business for 11 years, and we're actually working on what we're calling MassFX 3.0. We're doing our next kind of level up. And so we're doing a lot of hiring right now as we're growing and scaling. And that's just kind of like our big world of as we totally dream and rethink the way that we're running MassFX.
So I'm going to start it off by making this observation. Back in my day, right, I would reach out to the world to hire people. And there was this sort of presumption of like, wow, Impossible has this amazing opportunity. And I would have a bunch of people that would line up. And I don't know, it was like I got to sort of dictate terms because I was the one hiring and I was the one paying big salaries. And it was a really great opportunity. And I feel like that world is gone. And I'm just curious to hear from your perspective, when you hear that, Ryan, I'll start with you. When you hear that, has that world just gone? Is that totally changed? What is the dynamic out there right now?
I mean, 1,000%, as it probably should have been a long time ago, even before this, but I really do feel like the leverage is on the artist side. They may not have seen an upside in terms of their like artists rates actually increasing dramatically as they probably should have over the last 10 to 15 years. Rates are still reasonably around the same place. But it's kind of almost just turned, okay, well, if rates aren't going up, then it's availability. It's trying to find the people when you need them, as soon as you need them, for as long as you need them. It's just, I tell people all the time, like there's more work than there are, I'm not saying more work than there are artists, but there are more work than there are talented artists that are available and ready for each specific job at the given time. And it really is a artist market. And I think studios are slowly starting to get to the point where they have to realize like they have to respect that, and they cannot just drive the conversation. They have to be open to many more things and considerations. And we'll talk about all the different considerations, but it is not the same game.
So yesterday on LinkedIn, I was mentioning this event that we were doing today, and someone said, "Oh, Joel, there's plenty of talent out there. You just need to open yourself up to this, that, and the other, and tell your clients to look here and look there." And I said, no, it's not the problem is not finding talent. It's hiring talent.
Yes.
I'm curious, Shawna, would you agree? It's not so much that there's a lack of talent or that they're hard to find. It's that the process of, if I want to hire somebody, especially staff, what's changed, or why is it more difficult from your perspective?
Yeah, I feel like there's been, the pandemic was, of course, like a collective trauma that we all went through. And I think for us, there was this pattern. I'd be curious if for other people it was, where during the pandemic, when we dipped down, we actually had a moment where contracts were ending after we did the social dilemma. And then so we shrunk down a little bit, and then some people quit to go try other things. And then like the pandemic hit, and we were this tiny little team of just 5 people. And it was terrifying. And it was like, it's the perfect moment to be tiny. And then as we went into the fall, and for us, like our big film came out, and then like the phone was ringing off the hook, we panic scaled to 21, which was crazy. Wow. And it was like fast hiring. And it was so easy to find people because we were all remote. So like the entire team was remote. We were hiring people from different states. Like everybody was anywhere they needed to be. And about 6 to 9 months after that, we saw the Great Resignation, which I think we've called out in society, which we experienced as well. Like people during the pandemic were trying new things. And I think people who are very successful freelancers were like, I want to be with a team. I want to try out being a part of a studio. I want to work on bigger projects. They took jobs and then were like, you know what? I don't actually want to be an employee. Like I was really successful. I loved doing what I was doing as a freelancer. There was a lot of rub and like trying to figure out how to work together with those people. And I think we saw them leave. And then came this next little moment where then salaries kind of came up. There was this big question. Inflation went crazy. And so I think that's where we are now. Like you're saying, Ryan, like it's a buyer's market in a way, like it's an employee's market. They have, we would post jobs that we had posted 6 months ago, a year ago, and no one would apply. The salary wasn't enough. Like, and so we're like, well, is this the salary? So we changed the salary, get a few people, change the salary. And then it was like, oh, okay, there it is. Trying to find even those salary ranges is a whole new world. Like, I don't know, there's a national conversation going on about that as well, that I think is changing the way employees are thinking about it. Which
Ryan,
is, I think,
Ryan, didn't you say you had some statistics that you were even just looking at and processing before we even started? Because there's dynamically such a different set of data we have to look at when thinking about these decisions.
Yeah, I will definitely give you those numbers for like they're very quick, but I just want to add to what Sean is saying if I can. I think that we're also seeing the downside of a lot of systemic bad behavior by a vast majority of studios. There's kind of the ego driven, it's us, it's not you. There's we leverage down as a collective industry, reducing staff and really relying on freelance as like units to move rather than treating them as people who are artists who are valuable to the end product. I think that we've dismantled any sense of like mentorship or apprenticing as one of the key differentiators for motion design as an industry compared to other industries. We used to bring people in at an early age, bring them up, give them opportunity, give them mentorship with high level people, seeing how it's gone. And now we let all that go. And now people who used to be in that stage are coming out of school saying, why? is a studio important? Because I can freelance, and if I know someone who can get me to a brand, I have a GPU station right here with 4 GPUs. That's way better than your old machine from 5 years ago that you have to amortize. I can move faster. I know things that are better. And because the industry is so trend driven by the technology, I can do everything you're doing, but I can be faster. I can be smarter. I can be leaner. I think we are reaping for a good degree outside of, we can blame all of the other outside, economic pressures, but I do think there's been a lot of bad behavior on our part as well, just as an industry, as industry leaders. I think that those things also are part of the equation. I think we have to start answering the question for freelancers saying, why should I, go staff? We have to have the same way we tell our clients why we're a great answer to their problem. We have to start thinking almost equally to potential staff. Why should you come here instead of just do it on your own? I think there are great answers to that question, but I think it's a really important thing for us to be asking.
It's interesting because I could think back, it's like 3 generations of this problem ago, right? Where there was no such thing as a freelancer because the studio owned this major, $100,000 piece of equipment, and you actually had to show up physically to touch the keyboard that was attached to the computer to do the work. And when the desktop revolution took place, there was this opportunity really for people to pivot and go studio to studio, as well as studios to bring on individuals on a case-by-case basis. And that evolution kind of has played itself out in such a way where there's an entire freelance dynamic that's amazing and super great. And I think we all understand the possibilities and opportunities created with freelancers, but also there were individuals, and for good reason, people to lean into studio environments. So it's interesting you're calling it a bad behavior. To me, it's like just an evolutionary process where now we can ask a new question where no longer do we don't have to be attached to the keyboard that's attached to the computer in the other room. I don't have to be attached to the facility in any way. My laptop, the security profiles or protocols are already up in place. And it's a new opportunity as well. But it is something it's probably a struggle in the conversation, and a lot of challenges of probably the question of whose profit is it, whose work is it, whose client is it, that kind of stuff that we always have to ask of the ownership responsibility, and what do you get for being a business owner?
Right.
So Ryan, I'm curious to hear some of the
stats,
some of the data. I'm kind of waiting because it sounded really interesting before the call started. You said you had some interesting reality check of hey, it's not just sensing, this is real.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that from my what I was saying passionately, people understand that I am very much coming from the artist perspective as much as from the studio ownership side. But now to flip that equation a little bit and bring a little sense of reality to anybody who might be listening that's actually an artist, this is where I say there are lots of artists available, but the right artist for the studio, for the culture, for the types of jobs, for the time, for the scenario that each studio needs, those I still feel like are exceedingly rare, or at least not being connected in an intelligent way. So I can tell you, Ed is on this call, the owner of Spillt, and he had this really wonderful tool that we're using that's helping kind of streamline a lot of this process, but I can also give you data on the back end. So Ed, if it's okay for me to share some numbers, we have over the last, I'd say 2-3 weeks, we have 4 positions, 2D animator, 3D animator, editor, and designer illustrator. We had 438 total people apply. Significant number, right? Percentage-wise, that breaks down. These are crazy numbers. I think this is very important for anybody listening. 54% of the applications, designer, illustrator. 18% of it, editor. Only 15% of those were 2D animators, and of that, only 13% of that were 3D animators. Out of all of those people, 438, which we were able to watch every single demo reel. We did reach out to every single person to let them know that we've received it. The tool that we're using is great at that. I would say we've had a shockingly high number of return conversations in terms of emails back and forth. And on my open office hours, physically talking to people saying, hey, what do I have to do to get your guys' attention? We have identified and interviewed 15 people that fit our needs out of the 438. That's 3% of the total body of people applying that we felt actually accurately matched what we needed. Those are some pretty striking numbers. And that's coming from somebody who is rooting for artists and pushing as hard as you can to wanting to take on junior and mid-level people. That, as somebody who spent the last 2.5 years at a place like School of Motion, trying to get people to be able to understand how to catch the attention and be the appropriate person for a job, that was shocking to me.
I think you also just help Shawna understand the struggle she's having, because she's probably feeling the 3%, even if she hasn't figured out the stats of that 3%, huh, Shawna?
Yeah, I think that is interesting. And the yeah, I have so many thoughts and so many parts of that of like even figuring out and finding a tool like that, Ryan. And we might actually be using the same one of, because I think I saw your posts when we were talking about that, of just like even that utilizing artificial intelligence to help pull people in. Like one of the people we ended up hiring, that was an AI, like pinging, finding that person, and then us being like, wow, they're great, and like reaching out to them like, they're like happily employed, and we're like, are you sure? Have you seen this? But so even like those conversations are different, the way that people apply and the way people can get lost in the system, you know, like there's so many parts to it as like the person hiring, that you've just got cacophony. Like there's so much happening in front of you with so many people. You're sorting through so many things and having to make those decisions. To get it down to 15 is so much work. And, you know, you miss people. I think we just had one that I felt like we almost missed, of just, you know, had they not called, emailed, and linked me, you know, on LinkedIn, all this stuff of like, I'm like, who are you? Why are you bothering me? You know? But it's like, they are so interested, but there was something that we flagged that we, you know, you disqualify and like throw them out. And, but it's because of those other things of like, is their resume saying the right thing? Is their cover letter there saying the right thing? You know, is there a reel that actually shows you the things you're looking for, even if they're capable, right?
Do they have a link to the reel anywhere in the application?
Right. How easy can
I will tell you 15%. We ran the numbers. I think it was 15% of the 438 people that applied did not have a link to their demo reel anywhere. Even if I had to go one level deeper and go to their Twitter, their Instagram, they did not have a link tree. They did not have any easy way for me to actually do the deep dive and root for them to find the work, which was astounding to me. Astounding cover letters and deep thought in terms of like resumes and all, and literally no way. And this is like with an online application that also you can like attach a PDF and your social media. And it was shocking to me that like, that's where it gets back to, is like, just think of that number, 438 people. On average, most people's reels are at least a minute, if not longer. Just that number alone, you have to cut through the noise of 438 minutes worth of hoping that someone's attentive and really like wanting to honor your work. And that's where I get to the line. Like some people, like I had this really big post on Twitter and LinkedIn about the findings we found, you know, by going through this process. And there were a small group of people who were like, wow, this is really brutal to artists. Like you're really not being fair to them. I was like, I'm trying to be as fair as I can, because this is the reality. This is the truth. Like this is what you're up against. I root for every artist I watch. The time I hit play, I'm the most excited, want to hire you. And you're giving me all the reasons why I don't want to hire you as it goes down the line. But I start off as excited as possible with each one. So I think it's really interesting to see from the artist perspective how hard it is, but also from the studios, like Shawna just said, how hard it is for us to find you. There's a lot of
Don't
steps
you just
you can
miss the
take
days where like the person you hired knew somebody? Like you
mean,
go like, do you know any 3D artists? Yeah, then that's the person you hired. Like all this work to bring somebody on. It's so crazy. So tell me a success story, like the people you have found or have hired. How did it work? Why did it work when you finally got it together? Go ahead,
Shawna.
Shawna.
You've been successful. You have some great stories for this.
Yeah, I was trying to think of like what the best, and it's funny how I feel like I've now used, this is my second shopping for houses, like metaphor, but I feel like it's kind of like shopping for a house where you just know, like you can tell right away. So like you'll get the resume and the application and things, and there's stuff in it that you're just like, ding, ding, ding. They're just checking all those boxes. You click on the reel, like, come on. And it's like, yes, like they've got things you're looking for, and they've got, oh, they have other work, like not just a reel, because I want to see more than 4 seconds of everything. Like good on you, get a reel, but I want to see full pieces. And you're like, yep, check. And as soon as you get in that room, I feel like when you're doing an interview, it's that comfort level. Like we were really lucky. We were hiring an art director, and so we ended up hiring 2 art directors actually, because we found 2 amazing people that were great fits in different ways, which is just excellent. Like they have skills that really complement each other. And that it was just like immediately you were comfortable, like you felt like you'd been working together before, even though you had just met. And I think getting to that point, like there's so many moments along the path of like, we get that first touch of you've applied. And then did you also reach out or send some sort of email or ping or something, which for me, I feel like is positive. It means you want the job. And then there's watching through the reels and the work. The work is good, but then the actual meeting of the person to say, you know, are we a culture fit? Because you can be the absolute best artist in the world, but a culture fit is, it's just like there's that extra piece that you have to fit here within the studio of the way that we want to work and the way we work together, because it just won't be successful otherwise. So
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, that kind of Ben said it's like online dating, it sounds like a little bit here, like trying to find all the parts that match and to walk through it. It's a real effort. You know, some of what I've kind of worked with clients through and built for people is this thought of a recruiting process that you actually realize that sometime your operation gets big enough, it's actually an ongoing mechanism. You are always recruiting. That way, even when you don't think you need somebody, you're recognizing who's in the field, what talents out there, what people are available to do. And in that recruiting, you know, machine that you have, you actually are raising the bar and working the talent through your own company as well.
Right.
I honestly don't hear the word recruiting enough in the conversations anymore. I feel like it really is like this feast and famine kind of words that I hear more than not, like the needs and the wants and who's available and whatever, and not any kind of long game to it. But Ryan, I'm going to say, like, you know, working at School of Motion, like probably recruiting, you recognize the opportunity that all these students need to be recruited. Someone needed to come and find them before they were ready and understand them and pick them and grow them and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's where most schools really do fall apart. Even brick and mortar schools outside of something like School of Motion or Domestic or these other places that, you know, it is a human thing, right? It is a human discussion. Like I was just doing an open office hour today with someone who is gainfully employed. They thought they liked where they're at, and then after 8 months, they're like, wow, I become an art director. And I realized what my vision of an art director was and what this company thinks are two diametrically opposed. I need help finding a place that has an art director position and what I want. So like in my mind, I'm thinking, well, as an employer, it's not just enough for us to put art director and experience. It really is part of, like, if you're talking about being content creators, like you say a lot of times, Joel, it's about us putting out into the world what our company culture is, not when we need it, but to like plant those seeds now and let people know. Like I think of Amanda does a great job. I think of Dash Studios for all the social media outreach that they do and the podcasting and the putting on like an entire conference. You know, almost intuitively what it would be like to work at that place. And to me, maybe we don't use the word capital R recruiting, but those are recruiting efforts, right? When you put out a behind the scenes that isn't just wireframe, final render, and the client's reaction, it is really, oh, here's what it's like to work here. I always go to Imaginary Forces had an amazing reel a couple of years ago, and I thought it was one of the most brilliant things. They did a narrative reel, which is something Joel's a big proponent for. But in the narrative reel where they were talking to the clients, they were also doing something that I thought was talking to potential hires. They showed what it would be like to work in the office. They didn't just show the studio. They didn't just show the work, and they didn't just show the awards. They showed someone leaning over and helping someone. They showed someone like a creative director getting help from a creator or from an artist. They showed clients what it'd be like to be on set, and very like subliminally, they were basically creating a recruiting tool under the guise of, oh, here's our next reel. And I was like, that was brilliant. I don't even know if it was intended that way, but it made me want to work there again when I saw it. I thought that it was a really great choice, that it's recruiting isn't, like you said, something you do at the time of need. It's something you do all the time. And it's a muscle you have to build up and kind of exercise.
Well, believe me, I'm hearing what you're saying and agreeing with you, but I'm also in a way somewhat agonizing with the two of you and all owners, because let's face it, right? If you're an owner, this is just now being added to your responsibilities, right? Like Shawna, your genius is being a creative and an executive producer. Ryan, your genius is creative directing and all things creative. But guess what? Now you have to also solve this. And I don't know how many hours there are in the day, but last I checked, that's not changing. It's not increasing in your favor. So that said, you know, Tim, you're talking about, I think you're kind of asking that question, like, how can recruiting be more ingrained in the culture of a company down to the level of a tactical thing called a recruiting system, a recruiting method, a recruiting routine? Because I know I'm going to be asking the question, where the rubber meets the road, how do we create systems where we can delegate to members of our team to solve this? Because ultimately we're trying to solve this. Like here you are in the middle, right? Ryan and Shawna. Over here, it's like, it used to be all about how do we get more clients? But as your business grows, it becomes more about how do I grow my team and build talent, right? And the culture and all that sort of thing. And as time goes by, I think this becomes actually much more important. Again, we don't want to say anything to offend the clients out there, but if you go to a place like Buck, trust me, it's way more about the team that they're building, right? That's what the leadership is focused on, because that's the future. It's actually that team, not so much the clients. Anyways, any thoughts on that from either of the two of you?
Yeah.
I mean, you go ahead, Shawna.
I was going to say as you're maturing as a studio as well, what that brings up for me is not only defining and making sure to communicate what your culture is. So I think for me, when people mention our no assholes rule, and they're like, oh, I love that, I have it, that always, I'm like, well, you're our people. And so like things like that of the culture side of it, being able to tell out, who you are, and for people that to resonate with them. The other side though is defining those roles, right? And what you said about the AD of like, that might mean something different for someone. Like for us, we posted these art director positions, and that's a management role. Like you are managing, scheduling, you're following up with internal team, you're delegating. It's not what it sounds like, which is like, I'm going to design all day long, I'm going to love it. They do that. But I think that for us, even because we had never had an official art director on our team, we had to define and understand what we were hiring. I think there were a couple misses as we posted those jobs and then ended up pulling them down as we didn't find who we needed, where we would like relook at the description and say like, is this even it? Is this even what we need? And I think exploring that as a growing company, sometimes it takes hiring a person that isn't actually the person you're looking for to go, oh, that's not it, right? And that's a painful, hard process, because it's usually about 6 months that they last, or 9 months. They never last a year when you've hired the wrong fit. And it's for them too, it's mutual. We just aren't fitting, right? And so it's like that painful thing. So even have we actually posted the job we need? Like for a while that we have, our least successful hires have been, we loved them as people and hired them and tried to make a job for them. And then there wasn't the work, or there wasn't the right fit anyway. And so I think that's another thing that makes me think about it is, are you even posting the right jobs, defined the right way? And is your culture defined so the people applying are actually a fit for those things?
Yeah. I mean, I love that, because I think there's a third word that hasn't been defined that I don't know what it is yet, but we always talk about like, so like the marketing we do is what we say we are, right? Our brand is what all of our clients say back to us, what they think we are, right? But there is this other thing that I don't know if it's reputation or perception or whatever is the third part of that triumvirate that is like, and these are what the people who work for us, who we want to work for us, believe us to be as well, right? And I think that going forward, and this is why I say like bad behavior, for a long time, we were able to just kind of like abscond from that, right? As like studios, like, hey, we do great work, we'll pay you, come on, who's ready, right? And it's not that world anymore. So I do think that there's a word in there, perception, reputation, whatever, is that we need to not roll our eyes and be like, oh God, another thing I have to do. It's like, no, like if you want to be able to go to the great clients, you need the great team and the great artists. And you need to be qualifying those people and identifying them, like Shawna said, as like a Mass Effects person or a Spillt person. Identify them, and maybe they're super junior, but that's when you bring them in on more jobs and give them responsibility to condition them to the point where they would be staff, right? Like that's a skill set that I do think that's something that motion design in the earliest days did do, that we did have that like idea of mentoring and apprentice and interns and all this. And we've just kind of like been able to kind of scoot away from that because, oh, there's all these great freelancers, but I think it was
honestly a requirement when we were first making motion design for the first time, especially when launching into the digital age. It sounds so old when I say that, but the idea of like, where would anybody get experience unless they were in one of these rooms getting the experience? So we were very intentional of getting students. We had things called PAs. We had things called coordinators. Like there was channels of people that were being fed through a system. And now the assumption is, oh, I'll just take the cream of the crop of people that already did the hard work. I'm not going to raise them myself and I'll do it. The term we say inside of RevThink is you have to make your own people, right? So you can actually take the time, be intentional, and you invest in someone. And that does reap a reward. Even if that person leaves, the industry stronger because of your influence. That's the long-term collecting you want to do over your career. It's very intentional. It's kind of interesting. We're being called out. I think that's your initial point was, Ryan, is like, this is the moment we're being called out. Like we ran a deficit ourselves, and now we're paying the price for having that loan called. So with the step up, it really is the work of creative business ownership as this talent agency part of it. And that's what we sell to others and leverage forward. So I'll just say, congratulations and keep it up. You guys sound like you're working crazy trying to figure this thing out. And clearly it's resonating with the faces that we have in the joining us today. So let's take this conversation. Let's keep it going on community. The technology you guys are using, the software you're using, I think Ed already posted it here in the chat, but we can post that in community as well. Sounds like it's called Workable or something.
Workable. Yep.
Yeah. And then anything else that we can help kind of build this thing up. But clearly the community, the more people we get the word out, the stronger the community gets, and some of these behaviors can get to the better side of it.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how this conversation moves forward, because maybe there's a, dare I even say, an application moment, right? Like maybe I can convince Shawna or Ryan, right, to like workshop this inside of Confab and say, okay, how do we build a recruiting system? And how do we turn it into a method? Because it sounds like it's a need that every studio is going to have to master in the evolving world we all live in.
Sounds like a really great confab conversation coming up, Joel. Sounds like we're going to be starting the recruiting crash course right after the Vectors crash course.
Exactly.
I mean, I just do want to stress the point, because I feel like even in the responses on LinkedIn that I've seen, there are some people who are like, you just aren't paying enough. And I can't push back harder on that, is that we aren't doing a good enough job explaining all the other benefits of being staff and being part of the company culture. But it's not, compensation and quality of life is not just money. And we can argue that, and there can be people arguing it, but as people age through this industry and we all move together as being the first generation of artists and people working to try to like make it to the finish line, like there is a realization that it is more than just the money. And if that's what you're doing it for, that's fine. But that is not, an equivalent to everyone else in the industry, right? Like you might be at a point in your career, it's like, I can make 300 grand by triple booking myself and, working 340 days a year, but that's not everyone, right? And I applaud anyone who can do it, but those are also probably, quite honestly, not the people that Shawna and I are looking for our studios, right? There are people who have other things that they're valuing as well. So I just feel like that's an important part of what we have to define as the thing to attract people. Like, it's not just, we'll pay you 10% more. There's a lot more to it. We can talk about that another time, but I think it's important to remember that.
Well, Shawna, do you have a final thought, and then I'll wrap us up?
Yeah, I feel like Ryan, where you're going with that to finish it, of the rest of the story. I think we were having a conversation about remote work versus in office, and like at Mass Effects, we really value our employees to be here, local, working together. Of course, we have flexibility with remote needs, but I think that's something that the conversation is always like, are you paying enough? And what are the tasks you're doing? And I think when we think about the team we're building this machine in a sense that we're all running. And there's so many pieces of the machine that aren't in a task list that you can throw on Slack or F-Track, that it just happens throughout the day. There's creative things that we're doing together. There's just the like personal support of having just a group of your own fans around you, as your coworkers, of just people are like, how are you? How's your cat doing? Or whatever it is. Of like, as social creatures, I do agree there's so much value to being together with a studio, and some people are not looking for that, and that's fine. And I think there's a distraction in the conversation about hiring there, where they're like, well, you don't pay enough, and like, I want to be remote. It's like, then you're not a good fit for our team, and that's fine. Also,
right.
Yeah, so I think that too, of like, you want to make sure people value what you value as you're bringing together this team of people, because you're not just making the pixels, there's a lot of other things going on that is, a life of value for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fun.
Well,
it's all exciting.
Shawna, kudos on all your success, and we wish you all the best on this continuing evolving journey of hiring and solving these headaches. And Ryan, also, thanks for sharing your perspective and the some of the stats and data behind what you guys are experiencing at Spillt. It's kind of making my head spin. Tim, you want to wrap us up? We're 4 minutes over our allotted time here.
So 4 minutes over. I'll just keep it short and sweet. You guys all know that we exist so you can thrive in business, life, and career. Clearly, we're talking about those today with this. Please keep the conversation going in community, like I said before. And Emmett is capturing some of this information in the chat, so we'll be able to post some of those resources for you and community too, if you're interested. Thank you all for joining us. And Joel, as always, thanks for bringing this together with these great people. Shawna and Ryan, thanks for putting your voices out there and being heard. I love it.
Thanks,
Thank you.
You all
guys.
have a great
Being
week.
here. Nice to see all your faces again. Okay, bye everyone. Till next week.
Bye.